Voiceover Social.
Hello, Robert B.
Hello, Helen B.
Welcome to the VO Social podcast, guys.
Hello and welcome to all of our listeners.
Yeah. You don't sound enthusiastic. You should be.
I am enthusiastic.
What have we got coming up, Rob?
We have got something very exciting. We have a brand new feature, which I think we promised ages ago, but scheduling, calendar conflict and all the rest of it. But this month, very excited I am. We actually have to go alongside our news from Equity feature, we now have our news from Nava.
Woohoo! And an exciting new theme tune. Does it class as a theme tune or an ident?
Or an ident. A sting or an ident, whichever you prefer.
It's spectacular, Rob. I think you've been creating some beautiful musical magic with all the voices that recorded for us again.
I have, and you'll hear that later on. We're not going to give you any sneak previews.
That's rude. I mean, considering how much work Nava have been doing recently and how often they've been in various houses of government and fighting for the rights of voice actors over in the US, it's hardly surprising that it's taken a while for our diaries to sync nicely. But yes, it's lovely to have Tim Friedlander and Karen Gilfrey with us on this month, giving us lots of updates.
Yes. So if you want to go straight to that, you're going to have to forward fast, but I can't tell you how far away into the podcast it is. So you might as well just listen to the interview beforehand. Yeah. And the interview beforehand is with
Louisa Gummer.
Hooray! Our friend Louisa, who agreed to come to talk to us this month about rates.
Louisa is fantastic. She's been working in the voice industry for a very long time. You will have heard her voice all over the place, including on a few tube stations. But we are talking to Louisa about rates and voiceover industry rates, what the hell they are, how to set them, the stuff that you need to know, the pitfalls, the things to look out for, the confusion. It's just, and actually looking at a few other podcasts, it's not one that's often talked about, strangely. So we thought, well, let's dive in and see what happens. And the reason we picked Louisa is because she is always offering advice in various groups and forums and communities for the voiceover industry in the UK, and is a lot of people's go-to for on trying to understand what the hell's going on with them all.
Yes, indeed. So let's have a listen. So today we are joined by the wonderful Louisa Gummer. So Louisa, hello, and who the hell are you?
Hello. Well, I'm not Meryl Streep's youngest daughter, which may come up as a conversation later, or you can edit that out if you don't think it's relevant. I am a voiceover. I've been a voiceover for, I don't want to say how long, but all of this century and a little bit before, probably. And I am a trained actor. I trained at Mount View. In the days when my knees worked well, I even danced a little, but, moved to music more than danced, perhaps. But these days I sit down in my booth and I talk to myself a lot.
How did you get into voicing? I mean, you just said you're a trained actress.
Yes, I was.
Before that, and presumably before that, you did mathematics at Oxford.
I did,
so
yes.
How the hell does somebody go from maths at Oxford to sitting in a little booth in Hackney?
Why not, I would say. Why not? I mean, maths at Oxford seemed like a good idea at the time. Got completely freaked out by all the actors while I was there, who all swanned around in black velvet cloaks and darlinged everyone all the time.
Lovely.
Didn't think that was my thing at all, even though acting was what I'd always wanted to do. Went into advertising for a while, was sold it as a meritocracy, as in, if you do well, you'll get promoted. Realised it really wasn't that. It was much more about office politics. Mm-hmm. And I'm really not very good at that. I tend to be quite honest about what I say. So, yeah, that wasn't really me. So auditioned for drama school to get it out of my system, to just accept that I was one of those people who had a job she didn't like very much. And to my slight surprise, I got in. So borrowed some money from the bank on a career development loan. Mm-hmm. My mother took out a second mortgage on a house. I worked every weekend while I was at drama school. So it was exhausting and I didn't really have the time, I think, to give the classes and the preparation the time it needed, and I was perpetually feeling I was on the back foot. But came out of drama school and then realised that my advertising experience meant I really understood advertising copy and I had an understanding of how voices were chosen. So went back to my old agency and talked to the head of TV production there and said, how do I get a demo done? And he pointed me in the direction of somewhere that doesn't exist anymore called Saunders and Gordon on Gressy Street. And I did my first demo there and got an agent almost straight away.
Wow.
In the days when you could.
Blimey.
Not that the agent got me very much, but I still had an agent.
Sure.
So.
Yeah.
That is quite a career shift as well, and quite a leap of faith, I guess, maybe.
Well, yes, you see, people tell me it was brave, but at the time I felt I had no choice because I was drowning in a life I did not want.
I often find that with when we do talk to voiceovers, that's quite a common thread, is that the wrong way to say this is that people get into voiceovers because it's the only thing they can do. But what I mean by that is that...
Yeah, that's not a good phrase, Rob.
No, but it's true. What I mean by that is that they are just, they have this undying compulsion that they have to take on this creative role, this creative job, whatever it is. And so whether they're working in banking or insurance or, you know, stacking shelves in Tesco's or whatever it is, the need is there to kind of do that. So when I say it's all they can do, what I mean is they just cannot get it out of their system.
They need to find a creative outlet.
Yeah,
I think it's what
totally.
you mean. I'd done amateur drama when I was working in advertising at a quite high level in London, and that wasn't enough, which is why I auditioned for drama school. And I really did think I've just got to grow up and apply myself and accept that most people don't like their jobs.
Yeah.
And then I got in and thought, well, I have to go now, don't I really? So I went.
That's amazing.
I mean, the frustrating thing about all of these things, of course, is you come out of drama school really ready, feeling like you've been doing it all this time, you've been doing it every day, you're ready, and then nothing happens. And you have to find a way of surviving on a day-to-day basis when you're not getting to do what you're trained to do and you really want to do. Yeah. So I was very lucky, I think, that voiceover appeared very quickly.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, there is that joke, isn't there? How do you get a drama graduate off your doorstep? Pay for the pizza.
That's cruel.
That is.
But yes, there is. Well, I mean, you can apply that to many industries, I feel, sadly, at the moment.
Also ages you quite well, Rob.
Because you're not paying for it in advance on Deliveroo.
Exactly. Sorry, isn't it through an app?
Yeah, but the joke doesn't work then, does it?
There used to be one similar with McDonald's, I think, but I can't remember quite what it was.
Yeah.
But yes.
Wow.
So yes, as with, I think, quite a few voiceovers, I've relatively recently been diagnosed with ADHD, which explains most of my life and why it is I've had these wonderful portfolio careers of bits here and bits there and never feeling I quite settled. But the voiceover world has felt like home for a long time now.
Yes, I think there's something about that need to create and that ability to be able to shift and change and keep constantly moving things in your day to day. It actually suits the freelance self-employed life really well. That ADHD trait of not being able to settle and rest almost.
Yes and no. I need, it's not so much change, it's stimulus.
Yeah.
So the problem with being a voiceover, especially now that we never go to studios at all, is that I don't get any human interaction.
Yeah.
And that is difficult, especially if work is a little slow. Because you're constantly having to provide your own human interaction. And that's a challenge.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's not a challenge just for me. That's a challenge for all of us, I think. At times when things are slow and are not going the way we want, how do we keep going?
Well, I mean, this is part of the reason for the VO Social, particularly with the in-person meetups, is so that you can at least get out of the studio once every 3 months and talk to other people who are asking exactly those questions about how the hell do I keep myself entertained and stop myself getting terribly lonely and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, it absolutely brings into focus the need for human interaction when you are sitting in a booth all day, as we have said before, and
or
no doubt I will say
at a
again.
computer writing invoices or writing begging letters for jobs or whatever it happens to be.
Yes, it takes its toll.
It does, because you're constantly having to put your head above the parapet and saying, hello, I'm here. And sometimes nobody notices.
So 20 lots of years as a voiceover.
20-something years.
Where might we have heard your voice?
Oh, good grief. In the early days, it was on a Sunny D commercial.
Oh, lovely.
And I also got to talk about Always Ultra with wings quite a lot.
No way. Yes.
And something about the super absorbent core that turns liquid into gel.
Did you rollerblade whilst voicing those? I mean, I feel like you should have done.
I have to say, I'm not sure I've ever rollerbladed with or without any sort of sanitary protection. So, no. So that was very early. These days, depending on whether you're in London or not and which tube line you catch, you might hear me saying something like, "This is a Northern Line train via Charing Cross, terminating at Battersea Power Station."
Cool.
But only bits of it, only bits of the Northern Line. So it depends where you are. And bits of other stations on the Northern Line where you have to change for the Elizabeth line. I think I pop up and start talking about that too.
Oh, that's mad. The concept of how many people will have heard your voice.
I know. And I talk a lot at Kennington because there's a platform change. And I couldn't tell you what I say, but I keep telling people to go to this platform or that platform. So, yeah, that's the one I'd bring out at parties with normal people.
Love it. So it's more corporate-y kind of stuff.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the other thing I've done recently that I did not expect to get the sort of engagement it's got is that I am apparently now the voice for Little Miss Brave and Little Miss Surprise on a series of mini tales for the Mr. Men and Little Miss characters on YouTube. And I thought that was a nice little job and I'd post about it. It went crazy on social media. People I hadn't spoken to for years going, "Oh my God, that's amazing." So, yes. Corporate, yes. Bread and butter, sort of. But I'm a trained actor. So I love doing audio drama, even though there's no money in it. I love doing the odd video game. I love doing the odd bit of animation. Historically, there's been enough corporate work coming in for me not to push those areas too much. But the world is changing. Everything's getting more competitive.
And that kind of leads us nicely on to talking about voiceover rates. And I am sure I'm not the only one to know that you are a lot of people's go-to when people are trying to work out what to charge and where to even begin to start understanding voiceover rates. I know when I started getting involved in the industry, the way that you spoke about it helped me understand it a lot more. So for one, thank you for me, because as much as I don't need to charge clients it, I still need to obviously have an understanding of it. And I've seen you so many times in various forums and groups, and I know there are many more that I've not seen, where you've been supporting and helping people work out how to charge. So one of our questions, I think Rob and I both totally agreed on this one. Why are voiceover rates so complicated? If you could just sum that up for us, give us a nice little answer, that'd be great, because quite frankly, it makes my head hurt.
I think they're complicated historically. I think it all comes down to the fact if the voiceover job wasn't a job that existed at all and we invented it now, rates would be completely different. But in many ways, the only thing that two people who want a voiceover have in common is that they want a voiceover. They are coming from completely different industries with completely different understandings of what they want to use the voice for and expectations of what they think they should pay. And so there are standard rates in different bits of industries. And in the olden days, pre-me, so definitely olden days, you would work in one genre but not in another. Necessarily. Yeah. Whereas now we have to be a little bit jack of all trades. Also, people can find you much more easily. The market is much more open to people. So you can't have an hourly rate when your hourly rate for one industry makes them fall off a chair in horror. But for another industry, they rub their hands with glee and think, well, that's really cheap. You sort of have to understand the historical way their industries have worked in order to understand the value they place upon you historically and what you should therefore charge, if that makes sense.
I mean, more sense than most people have ever put it, which is why we wanted you here.
All of this is just the way that I see it. Because of the maths part of my brain, I like seeing patterns. I like recognising patterns and playing with patterns. Probably why I like doing escape rooms as well. I like puzzles. I like making order of things keeps me calm, because otherwise I feel everything's chaotic and I can't cope. So, and I like to I don't like not understanding something. And because I'm not scared of numbers, I will look at a sheet of numbers and say, well, why would they be that way? What does that possibly mean? And I'll come up with a couple of suggestions. So I don't run away screaming until I've really tried to work at it.
I do run away screaming from numbers.
Everybody does. And I do too, but not normally at the TVRs and things. It's normally at something slightly scarier and higher. Because uni was scary as anything.
Yeah.
You used a little bit of jargon there, which leads me very nicely into the next question. So you mentioned TVRs, and we also have BSFs and ILR rates and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, so many things. And per prompt rates everything.
Can you very, very quickly and easily, hopefully, explain some of these terms and things, specifically thinking about sort of new voiceovers and people who are just getting into the industry, just so that they kind of
All right, let's take it back to absolute basics. In most instances, you're charging for both the time it takes to do the job and the usage that the person using your voice is going to do with it.
Right.
I think usage probably as much as anything else is a hangover from the days of live TV ads in the States, where if you wanted someone to have the ad on again, you had to turn up to the studio and do the ad again. And so you got paid twice. And so when they started recording them, there was still an understanding that you should be recompensed for the fact that you were going to be used a lot of times. So it wasn't just a question of how long it took you to record it. It was what use they were going to do from it. So in many areas of our work, there is a usage element, not dissimilar to that for a photographer. If you're a photographer and you take a photograph of something, whether it's put in the local paper is very different to if it's splashed on billboards around the world. If you're a musician and you allow someone to use your song in a local radio ad, the price will be very different from if that song is used in a streaming platform series that is the flavour of the month.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same for voiceover. There is a usage element and a time it takes element. And certain industries in which voices are used have different understandings of how important those are.
Okay.
But there is also, and this is not me, this is something I vaguely understand, but it's not something I'm a encyclopedia about. There is then the whole copyright, other rights, intellectual property right as well, and the fact that what you're actually doing is you're spending time making the recording, but then you're licensing the recording.
Yeah.
You're not gifting it away.
Yeah.
Again, like photographers, you don't tend to own the photograph and do whatever you like with it just because you've bought a photograph from somebody.
Yeah. So that's usage.
So there's a time recording time element, and then there's a usage time element based on what they're going to do with it. So your recording time would be, and the standard tends to be that there's an hourly rate. I suppose in many ways it makes us look like Naomi Campbell saying she doesn't get out of bed for 10 grand, but we don't charge by the minute. We don't just say, well, it's only taken me 30 seconds, so I'm only going to charge you 30 seconds of my hourly rate. There's a sort of standard minimum unit, which historically has been an hour, because historically you had to go into town and sit in a studio.
Yeah. So that's the BSF.
That's your basic studio fee, which is BSF, which varies hugely. I think Equity's rates vary between, say, 150 and 350 as a suggestion, because that's all it really is. And somebody might have a BSF that's different for one industry than another.
Yeah.
But most of us will have an hourly rate that is the building block that we build everything else on.
Yeah.
And then in the old days, when television was broadcast on an aerial to your television, and people watched television all together as a family, there needed to be a way of knowing how many people were watching a programme, rating, effectively. And they were quite big numbers. I mean, when EastEnders One Christmas, Den gave Angie her divorce papers, I think it had 24.5 million people watching.
I mean, it's staggering, but there were only about 4 channels, weren't there? So
I guess, well, exactly. Yeah. And also, video wasn't, I mean, you had videos, but still people would be watching everything all together and talk about it the following day. It was one of those things. So, as an advertising agency, when you're monitoring what you've bought, in the very old days, you were just paid by spot.
Okay.
So if your ad was on 30 times, you got a percentage of your basic studio fee times 30. And there would be machines that churned out pieces of paper every month that listed all the spots the ad agency had bought and then produced a cheque for every person in the ad, which was lovely.
Yeah.
And then they decided that they didn't want to pay the same for an ad that was on in Coronation Street as they did for an ad that was on in the middle of the night when nobody was watching.
Yeah. Lower viewing figures, I get that.
Yeah. And actually, I think probably there was a feeling too that I shouldn't be recompensed the same for an ad that's seen by 24 million people as an ad. So there's a balance there between ad agencies maybe wanting to pay less and actors maybe wanting to be recompensed a bit more. So they changed the system to base it on ratings. So it was no longer a spot count. It was a total number of people who had watched over a month.
Okay.
And because one ad might get you 24.5 million viewers, if it was on in Coronation Street, those figures could be quite big. So because of that, and because media buyers were dealing with them all the time and quoting to clients how many ratings they'd bought, they effectively designed a new unit to make it smaller. So,
Excellent.
which is what a television rating point is. So
Just made it up.
no, they didn't. They absolutely didn't. They looked at the time, this is my understanding, they looked at the number of adults in the country who watched television.
Okay.
The universe, as it was, which I think was about 45 million people.
Right.
Because it was only really adults they were interested in, they said. So if everybody in the country watched something, you'd get 45 million people watching. And they said, let's call that our universe. That is 100. So they indexed it. So 100 television rating points would be 45 million people watching.
Okay.
But if only a proportion of that is watching, it's going to be smaller. So instead of dealing with 45 million plus 45 million, you're suddenly dealing with 100 plus whatever. And although it is a percentage in a sense, you can add them up because they're all based on the same base, which is 45 million.
Yeah.
So it just made the reports smaller, the figures in the reports smaller. Everybody knew what you were talking about. You could get a feel for what 400 TVRs would be for a big campaign, for example. And you knew what your competitors might be doing. And it's a much easier figure to cope with than XXX million. So a rating point is just a percentage of a historic number of adults in the UK who watch television.
So that's TV.
And it was a brilliant system that worked until the system changed. Until you now have stations where you can buy a spot that gets a number of eyes that if you tried to work it out as a TVR would be non-existent.
Yeah.
Because now we do have much smaller figures than we used to. And now people selling online space want the client to think they're getting value for money, so start talking in millions again or hundreds of thousands.
Right. So I'm guessing some industries will still use the TVR.
TV does use TVRs.
Yeah.
Online TV uses TVRs. Americans have no idea what we're talking about because the entire way they pay commercials is different. And it's not necessarily about how many hours, it's a period of time, and it's a period of time at a rate based on how important the channels are that they're showing it on.
Well, I was coming on to my next question, which was going to be, how does that compare? Is it the same internationally? How do we compare with that? You know, for those of our listeners who are outside the UK.
Well, again, back pre-internet, we had a market that we knew what we were doing in the UK and we knew what we would charge within reason in the UK, and we dealt with UK clients. And occasionally your agent might get a fax or a telex because they wanted a British accent and they couldn't find anybody locally. Whereas these days we're in a completely different world.
Yeah.
And so just as different industries have different expectations, so do different countries.
Yeah.
And so do different industries within those countries. My bills are the same, regardless of whether I do a job for a client in the UK or a job for the client in a country in Europe or a client further afield. My bills are the same. And so I have to weigh up what they expect to pay and what I want to pay with what is realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And much as that suggests, you could read between the lines and assume that other countries pay less, they don't always. It depends on the industry and the country, because they've historically got different rates.
Yeah.
So it does help to understand, I think it helps to understand how different countries historically have worked and what they consider to be the acceptable going rate. And the fact that you're approached by a company from another country quoting a low rate doesn't mean that's the low rate for the country. It just means they've had to throw the net further because they know they've got a small budget sometimes.
Yeah. So how do you even begin to work out? I mean, it was complicated enough. Now it's got even worse. Where do you start trying to work out what a standard?
You need to know what they want to do with it.
Yeah.
So you have to start asking some questions. You know, and the moment I get an email saying, well, it's only 30 seconds long, or it's only 12 words, and I think, that's not going to help me at all.
No.
Because I have no idea what you intend to do with it, or where you're putting it, and so I can't I need some more information. What are you going to do with it? How long are you going to do it for? Where are you putting it?
Yeah.
To get a better idea. And then I think there seems to be a movement in the UK, at least, for anything online or digital to look at impressions, which is eyes on the page or ears in the headphones, depending on whether it's audio or visual. And then base a figure based on how many people are going to see or hear it, just like in the old days with TV, with television. And you can do that if you want. If the corporate voiceover you're doing is actually going to have paid for money behind it, you're going to want to charge more than if it's sitting quietly on their website not doing very much. Because they're pushing it. They're going to have it seen by more people. And it's a commercial rather than just a nice puff piece about how wonderful we are.
Yeah.
So lots of open questions. Have an understanding of the industry. Have an understanding of the things people might do with your voice. Ask lots of open questions about where they're going to put it, how many people might be seeing it, how long they want to use it for. You'll get pushback sometimes, normally because you're not dealing with the end client. And so they've not been given all the information, or they themselves have not asked. Or in some instances, because in that country, they don't bother to ask, there's just a flat rate.
Right. So how would you go about managing that with the... I'm guessing that everybody will have their own way of doing it, and there is no set.
There's not. But I think you have to approach it assuming they're not trying to rip you off. So you're not coming at it from a I need to catch them out perspective, which some people do. And that it's actually a conversation between two people where you're trying to help them to pay the least amount of money they need to be paying in order to get to use your voice in the way they want to use it, so that you're not charging them for things then they aren't going to use, for example. So it's about having a business intelligent conversation where you're building a relationship to get to a figure that everybody's happy with.
It's an education, isn't it, as well, I guess, of them understanding where you're coming from. But yeah.
I think so. I think there is an element of education because so many people now are using voices that would not have done in the past and have no real understanding of what rights they do and do not have when they use your voice. And so you don't want to be dictatorial or rude, but you do want to say, this is how it normally works. This is how I would normally charge. You can point people towards the GFTB website or the GVAA website to give them an understanding of how complex this whole process is. But I think if you come to it from a thought of, I'm trying to help you to only pay what you need to pay.
That's a really nice way of twisting that conversation, actually, to be a beneficial one, not a negative one. I really like that approach. I think that's, and I don't think I've actually heard anybody say it quite so as is as that. And I think that's a really lovely way of putting it. It's a top nugget of advice there.
I also try and make it understood that, if they have a budget, I'd really quite like to know what it is, because then I can try and make it work.
Yeah.
It's not a game of who blinks first necessarily, but if you had a figure in mind in your system, I need to know what it is so I can work out whether I'm going to be way within that or we shouldn't even really be having this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without being rude.
Yeah.
So you are entitled to ask questions like, do you have a budget in mind? And then shut up and see if anybody fills the silence, because silence likes to be filled and somebody will give way eventually. So you sort of bite your tongue if you're doing it by phone. So did you have a budget in mind? And you literally bite your tongue or you bite your lip and see what they say.
Yeah.
Because most clients actually want to hire you. I mean, they've contacted you because they want you. They don't want to be made to look stupid because they don't understand the system. So if you hold their hand and guide them through, you're building a relationship.
Yeah. I agree. I had an interesting... I was freelancing for an agency that was hiring voices for events, and they'd never really worked with voiceovers. It was really early when I was working with VOs, so I didn't know as much about it as I do now. But it was fascinating watching the kind of, from their side of it, the kind of nervousness from their point of view, because they weren't comfortable with it. It was a new thing for them. They knew they needed to work it out, but they weren't sure where to go for advice. And certainly the agency that was hiring them wasn't giving them anything. And yeah, it was really interesting watching how it was kind of dealt with. And a lot of it was about that kind of, okay, so, well, we've got this budget, and actually there probably is some shuffle room in it because we kind of just presumed. And that's another thing I think that people forget sometimes, is that people just lots
of people make assumptions on both sides, I think.
Yeah. they just presume because they see a Fiverr rate somewhere that, or they just don't appreciate that working for a certain company, particularly if it's a more high profile job, means that that would also stop you getting work from other companies of a similar
so many elements
industry.
contribute to all of this that if I am now the spokesperson, de facto spokesperson for this brand, that rules out an entire genre. Plus maybe other industries where they're not directly competitive, but the parent companies are.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a voice for, say, Coca-Cola, you're not going to be doing any other soft drinks. You're unlikely to be working for PepsiCo. You're unlikely to be... it just wipes out so many potential
You're unlikely to be
clients.
doing any fast food.
Yeah.
You're all sorts of areas have just gone.
Absolutely. And when I realised that, it totally changed my perspective of how much a voiceover is worth. And I think sometimes it's just the lack of understanding of that side of things from an agency point of view.
I mean, I can also understand from the client's point of view that you get 3 people to quote and they come in at €200 and €1,700 and you have no idea why. But going with the low quote doesn't necessarily mean that that's a good business decision, because it could come back to bite you hugely. You know, as a client, I mean, and I think the whole situation with Gayanne Potter recently, the ScotRail use of an AI voice that looks like it's been very clearly used without appropriate rights and usage.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that scared an awful lot of people off from going anywhere near AI voices in case it opens a can of worms. So the company should be doing their due diligence on making sure they're getting what they're paying for, but they're not paying for too much. And it's your job to guide them through the process and educate them so that there isn't something that comes back in a year's time where they start popping your voice on something and realising that they can't.
Yeah. I guess that's another point, is having a contract that clearly states where they can and can't use your voice as well. When you do finally get to that point where you've agreed a figure, is making sure that is in writing.
Let's just confirm we've agreed this time period for these places for this fee, and that if you need to renew it, let me know, or I'll contact you before the renewal date. And if you wish to use it somewhere else, we can have a conversation, and I'm sure we can make it work.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a hypothetical situation. In a lot of kind of industries and professions and things like that, people who are new to the industry will generally kind of charge a bargain basement price because they don't have necessarily the experience and skills, and they're not going to do the job as quickly, blah, 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 blah. So what is wrong with someone who is a new voiceover, let's say, charging like £200 for a TV ad that is going to be on telly for 6 months? They're doing it with the knowledge that, you know, they're not as experienced a voiceover as someone who has been doing it for 20 lots of years or whatever. And so they're giving that kind of cheaper price because they know they're not as good. Is there anything wrong with that?
Does the end user know that the voice they are hearing is inexperienced?
Such a good question.
Is the client somehow getting less value for money by putting that voice on their commercial? Or is the value of that voice to the client exactly the same, regardless of experience, because that's the voice the client wants?
I mean, it's not coming across in the audio, but I'm grinning wildly at the moment.
Yes,
I just wanted to point that out.
I am very hopeful that those are rhetorical questions, because I haven't formulated my situation well enough in my head to answer those questions.
But that is it, isn't it? It's that why, just because you're new, should you charge less?
I don't think there are many industries where you don't really need a CV. I think a lot of people will go into this voiceover industry and feel that they're a bit of an imposter and feel they don't really know what they're doing. But, you know, we were all starting somewhere. We all felt we didn't know what we were doing, and we're walking into an industry where we're expected to be able to hit the ground running. But there is no training ground for voiceover work. There's training grounds, there's coaching, there's training, but there's no training ground. As an actor, yes, you have to start small, mainly because people won't give you or trust you to take bigger roles. Yeah. So you start in TIE, or you start in a nasty little pantomime that goes around in a van or whatever. But there is not that for voiceover.
No, you don't get a junior role, do you?
You do not get we just say 2 words here and we'll give you £5 and go away and tap you on the head. People very rarely hire you because you've done thousands of commercials. I mean, they will look at you and put you on the list, but at the end of the day, it's what you sound like that gets you the job.
Sure. Yeah.
So if they're choosing your voice because they think your voice is the best match for their brand, unless you love that company that you would walk over hot coals for them and sacrifice your firstborn, why effectively write them a cheque for 3 or 4 grand? I mean, I get it. It's scary as anything when you're talking about money and you're talking about yourself and you feel like I've only sat there for 10 minutes and I've said something and I still don't quite understand why they love my voice so much. But hey, it almost feels embarrassing to have to discuss money. So you have to put a different hat on. One of my early experiences after drama school was that I was in a cooperative agency, which was really helpful because you've got to be agents for everybody else, every other actor in the agency. Wow. And you were told very clearly that if it was your day in the office and the phone rang and someone was offering you specifically a contract, you were not, as you, to accept it immediately. However excited you were to, if necessary, not say who you were and say, great, I'll pass that information on to, I think it was Fiona at the time, who was our negotiator. Because if you accepted it, you'd taken all her power away. So in a way, you have to have this dividing line between you, the voiceover, who's just so excited to have got a job, and you, the manager of the voiceover, because you are both, who is trying to get the best deal for your client. And I get it, I do. It's so hard and it feels like such an overcrowded, and it's much more overcrowded than it used to be, profession. But I don't know who benefits from charging practically nothing because nobody will care. Nobody is more likely to give you your second job because you basically got the first one for free.
Yeah.
Most people's demos these days aren't real work. When I started, it was, I remember feeling guilty about my demo because it was all fake work. And the moment I could replace it with real work, I did. But these days, most demos aren't necessarily real work.
Yeah.
So does it matter that it's your first job? I don't think it does.
No.
I mean, okay, if you feel guilty at the money, fine. Ask for a little less, but don't literally gift it away. If the only reason they're hiring you is because you're dirt cheap, the likelihood is you do not have a career in this industry.
There's that. And also, I mean, I don't know about you. I'm going to guess that both of you agree with me on this, but also the people who want that dirt cheap rate are usually the most awkward, difficult to work with, demanding, soul-destroying clients you've ever worked with.
Yeah.
Yes. I think the problem is, though, that an awful lot of people who enter this industry, especially if they've come through what is more of a traditional route, which is drama school and so on and so forth, but they haven't necessarily had experience of the wider corporate world and the sort of budgets they sometimes have at play.
Yeah.
And so a television commercial that you're being paid $4.5 grand for example, sounds obscene until you realise when you look at the amount of TVRs they would have had to buy, which you can calculate because, at least historically, ITV used to publish their average spot rate every year, would have been 2 million.
Yeah.
So the company is spending £2 million on airtime for this commercial, and you are feeling guilty at having less than 1% of it.
Yeah. And I think that's before you even include things like creative agency fees.
Yes. And all the other people that get themselves in the chain to take a little bit.
Yeah. I come from that advertising agency world, and when I first started seeing what my time as a junior designer was charged out at even by the agency, let alone the senior things, it made me want to cry, because if I'd have earned that in a week, I would have had the equivalent of a year's salary. It was eye-watering amounts of money that my brain did not understand. And I think that's
And so I think you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're demonstrating you do not understand the industry, and it behooves you, which is more of an Brits use it, but I hear it more with Americans, so I avoided doing an American accent at that point, but it behoves you to do your research.
Yeah.
I think one of the things drama schools don't do in this country is they don't train people in the business of the business.
I think a lot of it's not just drama school. I think most university courses don't train people in how to
actual world.
No. Learning how to run our business has been an experience, I think.
I think it is for everybody because it's you can do an MBA and you can know all the theory, but putting it into practice is very different. And it's the same with drama school, that you come out, but unless you've been taught, unless somebody's gone through equity contracts with you, then who has ever had an equity contract and read all the small print and knows what they should be entitled to if they run 1 minute over, or whether they should be allowed lunch, or whether they're paid. As far as I'm aware, it's still the case, officially, that if you get a recall for a commercial, if you go and do a voice test, you get paid in this country, even though these days we don't tend to go into studios to do them. So we used to historically get paid for effectively auditioning. that they'd chosen 3 people off their reels and weren't sure, so you'd go and do a voice test.
So where would you recommend people do go if people are looking to find this education? Because I'm presuming that you don't want everybody giving you a ring.
No. Well, you know what? August is a quiet month, and I've said I quite like being social. So I'm always happy to help if somebody rings up and asks, if they ask in such a way that doesn't suggest they see me as a human ChatGPT.
Yes.
I'm always happy to help people, but I think you just have to think, well, what's going on underneath this? Why are these figures the way they are? What even are these figures? Don't be scared of the numbers, because you cannot be a business person if you're scared of numbers. The reason so many musicians used to get ripped off is because they didn't read the contracts, they didn't understand percentages, they didn't understand that their advance was actually their money that was then having to pay for everything else. And so many industries are like that, where people come in new and don't necessarily understand it. Why would you go into an industry where you don't really understand what's going on?
Yeah. You very much have to appreciate that, voiceover isn't just about the performance. It is a business. You have to run it as such. You have to learn things like how to do tax returns and how to budget.
If you are very lucky, you come straight out of training, or even before, you get picked by a brilliant and totally reliable and honest agent, and you never need to think about any of those things again. But I think that's very, 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 very rare.
Very. I think it always was. I think it's even rarer
I think it always
now.
was, but it's almost non-existent now.
Yeah, totally.
Because of the democratisation of the industry through the internet. Agents are involved in certain areas where people do not want to be deluged by 600 applications for one job. Yeah. And also the Uberification of voiceover in certain platforms that throw 700 voices at one job. It just means that it's much less likely that you won't have to discuss money and you won't have to understand what you're worth. Why would you go and do a job and not know what you should have been paid, ever, in any job?
So, some top tips then. Little nuggets of advice. Can you give us a couple of top tips for working out how much to charge?
Just take a deep breath when the email comes in saying, I think you'd be the right voice for this. What do you charge? Just take a deep breath, go and have a walk, make a cup of tea. You don't need to reply instantly. The job's not going away. Think about the questions you need to ask, because you normally can't answer that until you've got some more information.
That is such a good bit of advice.
Yeah.
You just don't need to act instantly. We're in a world where we don't switch off, but that doesn't mean you need to reply to everything instantly and have to know the answers. Because they don't know that you weren't in a session. They don't know that you weren't picking your kids up from school. They don't know you're not in a different time zone and are fast asleep.
That's a very good point.
Yes. At that point, I think that's a really good prescient point to leave things at. So thank you very much, Louisa, for joining us and giving us the benefit of your experience and wisdom.
It's just my opinion and it's just my experience, but and it's much easier to say than it is to do. It doesn't mean I don't feel sick every time somebody asks me to do a quote.
And that is good to hear too. Thank you for being so honest with us.
Thank you very much.
News from Nava.
Our brand new feature, our new feature is News from Nava, which will go alongside our News from Equity, and we'll be running this probably about every 3 months, whatever. We'll see how much stuff happens and how excited we all get with having proper real-life Americans on the podcast. Woohoo! So, without any further ado, Tim and Karen, can you quickly introduce yourselves and just let people who are unfamiliar with yourselves on Nava, let us know who you are?
I'm Karen Gilfrey. I am the Vice President and co-founder of the National Association of Voice Actors.
And I am Tim Friedlander, President and co-founder of the National Association of Voice Actors. And together we are also some of the co-founders of United Voice Artists, which is a global association and coalition of voice acting associations.
Oh, and you are both working voice actors as well.
We are, yes.
I say that as less as, just on a side.
Yeah.
Just a small thing that you do on the side.
Yes,
but yeah.
exactly.
Also, just for those people who have been living under a rock, what the hell is NAVA?
Yeah, so NAVA is the National Association of Voice Actors. We are a professional association of voice actors. We have a lot of members who live in the U.S., but we have people who live all over the world who are members of NAVA. And we were created to advocate for the voiceover industry in all places that it exists. So, everywhere.
And you're very much working in collaboration with and sharing information with organizations all around the globe as well.
Absolutely.
That we do. The United Voice Artists groups we have is 35 or 40 associations in 22
Cool.
countries. And so we're trying to make sure that all of these associations are aware of what's happening around the world.
We also really want to elevate the voice of the voice actors, pun intended, within SAG-AFTRA as well, because SAG-AFTRA, we are not a union, we're an association. SAG-AFTRA in the US is our actors union, but there aren't as many voice actors in SAG-AFTRA as you might think. And so a lot of the issues that face our industry are not top of mind all the time for SAG-AFTRA. So if we have an organization that is strong and full of people who make their voices heard, it's much more likely that the things that we care about will become a priority for SAG-AFTRA. So that's kind of our goal as well.
So, I mean, this sounds like an impossible thing to sum up in a few minutes, but what have you guys been up to then?
For us, the main thing that we always start with is education, and that is educating voice actors, educating casting directors, producers, legislators, politicians, anybody who is involved in working with voice actors in any capacity. And for us, the very original place we started was by launching what we call the Nava AI synthetic voice writer, which is an addendum that anybody can add to any contract. And most recently, we updated this about 4 days ago. We're on version 4.0 now, which has some clarifying language, and is now also, thanks to our friends in OVU, which is a Latin American association, we now have all of the writer and instructions in Spanish available on the website as well.
Amazing. And we will absolutely be putting the link to that in the show notes for anybody that wants to use it. I'm sure, hopefully, lots of people already are. But yes, great to hear.
Yeah, and we are seeing it, come back already, in thousands of contracts that voice actors have used over the last 2.5 years, as well as coming from production. There are now many production companies that just include this language or this writer in their contracts.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's really good.
We are living in an unprecedented time in the world, but in our industry as well, where it used to be that any time you needed to record something that would then be for public use or business use or whatever, you had to physically be in the studio in order to do that. But now someone can take a very small snippet of your voice. At less than 3 seconds is all that it takes in order to create a believable digital double of a voice. And so at Nava, our goal has always been to protect our industry, to protect actors, and to protect each other. And so one of the ways that we've been doing that, as Tim said, is by having this Nava AI synthetic voice contract writer, which can be included with any contract, regardless of whether it's an AI job or not. It just has AI language in there that says the sound files that we create for this job are to be used for the purposes of this job only and not to be used to make or train AI or a synthetic version of my voice.
Brilliant.
Fab. Yep. That's great. It's so useful and so important at the moment as well with, we're hearing all the time about, various voiceovers whose voices have been stolen or being used in places that they were never authorised to be used. So having that rider is more and more important all the time.
And it's available for anybody. It's not country specific. It's not association or even industry specific. So anybody, regardless of where you live, if you're in the UK, if you're in any other country and you want to translate it, you can use that. You can add it to your contract. As long as the client you're working with agrees to it, then it can be added to any contract.
Yeah, and it's not behind a paywall for anybody that's querying that one as well. It's free to use, which is absolutely amazing. And it's please work to contracts, folks. Please, please.
Moving on, just because time is precious. I'm sure you've been up to more than just that. So, what else can you tell us?
Yes. So we have been working. Like Tim said, the first thing that we've been doing is education and getting people information about contracts. The second thing that we've been doing is we've been working a lot on legislation, both at the state and the federal level. And the reason why this is important globally is because we live in a global industry. We operate in a global industry. California is incredibly important in the world of technology and the world of entertainment. And so if we work on some of the laws in California and get some protections in place for California residents and people who work with companies that have their home base in California, then that kind of trickles down to the rest of the world. It sets the precedent for other states to follow, and it sets the precedent for federal regulation in the United States as well, and then kind of sets a precedent for everyone else. So right now we're working on a bill called the AI Copyright Transparency Act, AB 412 in California. And that bill would establish the right to know if your copyrighted material has been used to train an AI model. So
Wow,
what it does
okay.
is if you believe that something that you own the copyright to has been used to train AI, you write to the company and ask them. They would then be required by law to check through their system and see if it exists. And then they are required by law to tell you whether or not it exists. And if they don't tell you, then they would receive, then they would be required to pay a certain amount of money per day that they don't tell you, is the way that the bill is written now. But it's not a law that decides whether or not it's moral, ethical, or legal to use copyrighted material in models. It just gives the copyright holder the ability to know, which is really great.
Yeah.
And then Tim can talk a little about what we're doing at the federal level as well.
Yeah. On the federal level, over the last couple of years, there's been a few bills that we've been in support of. The one that is currently moving through the system right now is called the No Fakes Act, and it would create a new intellectual property right for voice, image, name, and likeness. And that right would come along with protections and rights for that intellectual property right. So one of the things that we've been talking about is not this idea that we're trying to regulate AI. We're trying to get protections in place for humans and the voice actors, and those protections will have ramifications when it comes to these AI systems. So that's what we've been working on. At last count, I believe we've had a little over 110 meetings in Washington, D.C. with lawmakers over the last, I believe, going on a little over a year and a half, going on close to 2 years, as well as, multiple meetings with other advocates in the industry, think tanks, research companies, research universities who are looking into these things to try and really get out there kind of in line with our goal of education. So to go out and educate as many people as possible about the rights that we think, we believe that we should have in this new age.
That's incredible. Blimey. That's a lot of meetings as well.
It's a
I mean,
lot.
if anybody's in doubt about
Yeah.
what you guys are doing and how much work is involved, I think that sums it up beautifully.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
That's
good.
incredible. So is there anything else you want to update us about that everybody should know about? Or
I would say, one of the things that we really try and do is in this kind of vein of education is to let people know about things that are happening in politics that maybe they wouldn't know about by just generally watching the news. So one of the things that we tried to do was be a part of this advocacy around removing from the big, beautiful bill that was just passed an AI moratorium that was trying to be snuck into that bill that would have prohibited states in the United States from making AI regulations for the next 10 years. And
wow.
we, along with many, many other groups, raised a lot of noise, informed a lot of our members to make sure that they would call politicians and make their voices heard and make their opinions heard. And that part of the bill was removed. We now get to move on to the next part where they're going to probably try and sneak it into something else. And so we have to kind of keep aware of what is happening. But those little things that get snuck in that we don't make the headlines, those are the things that we have to really pay attention to, because those are the things that will have the largest ramifications on these industries going forward.
Because in the technology world, 10 years is like 1,000 years everywhere else. And AI is
several
growing.
evolutions in that time.
AI is growing exponentially. The amount of technological advancement that we have seen if you just take synthetic voice models, the leaps and bounds of progress that synthetic voices have made just from 2021 to today is night and day. It is a completely different landscape than it was in 2021, 2022. And every couple of weeks, there are advancements that we look at each other and go, oh my God, like what is happening? So, the technology, we can't stop it. It's here to stay. And our goal from the beginning has not been to be anti-AI or anti-progress. We are just pro-creator. And you can kind of future-proof against the technological advancements by, instead of regulating the technology, giving every person the right to their own voice, image, name, and likeness. Because then it doesn't matter how great the technology becomes in the future. If you own the right to yourself, then you have a lot of leverage. And you can decide whether or not you want to license that to a company or not. But if you don't own yourself, you have no leg to stand on.
It's such a bizarre concept that we don't. I just find it bizarre.
Yeah.
It's just, how is it possible? I mean, thank you from our point of view, and I'm sure everybody that listens, everybody that knows of Nava, thank you for everything that you and the rest of the team do, because it has and is making a difference, and it's lovely to see it. And we hope to hear more positive wins from you guys in the future.
Absolutely.
As do we hope to have more positive wins to share. Yes.
So yes, thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
Hopefully see you again very, very soon.
Yes. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to the VoiceOver Social podcast, hosted by Rob B and Helen B from BEE. Sponsored by BEE. VoiceOver Social. Thank you to our guest,
Louisa Gummer
from
louisagummer.com.
Socials coming up are the Pint of Rabbit online social on Friday the 15th of August, Wessex in Salisbury on Saturday the 16th of August, Belfast on Saturday the 23rd of August, Manchester on Saturday the 13th of September, Brighton on Thursday the 18th of September, Kent in Canterbury on Friday the 26th of September, Humberside in Barton and Paris on Saturday the 27th of September.
all audio production by Rob B.
Please like, subscribe and leave a review to help more voiceover people find us.
And if you want to email us, it's listen@thevosocial.com.
See you next month. The VoiceOver Social.